And again, it's really just like how sort of, I think, how much does certain like mainstream outlets, how much do they have to like kid themselves to broadcast this stuff as if it's real? And how much effort is associated with them having to sort of pretend this is actually genuinely real? And I think part of what also inhibits that is that on this same committee, you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you've got all these sort of like lunatics out there. AOC is also on this committee. Cori Bush, I think, is on this committee too. And they're out there. I think we played some footage of Cori Bush. This is AOC, and I think this is from yesterday or the day before. And this type of stuff, like, they're trying to bring in like Twitter executives, and they're trying to make it about like this whole conspiracy to hide the Hunter Biden story. This is listen to the way that she starts this off. She starts it off first with the Hunter Biden, right? I think it is.
This is in the context of the Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
Stuff,
okay. Listen to this.
Into it, Ms. Navarrete. Let's talk about something real. I'd like to show you a tweet posted by former President Trump about my colleagues and I on July 4th.
Oh, wait a second. There was another clip in there I sent in there that is where she starts off. She mentions the Washington Post, and it is. Hold on, let me see if I can find it now. We got to find that one because that is the one that is. Bear with me. She basically puts to lie the whole aspect of. Oh yeah, here it is. It's that Instagram clip. It's right here. Hold on, bear with us. She starts off by basically she's going to address other things about Twitter, but she starts off by talking about the Hunter Biden story. This is about the suppression that went on. People forget this aspect of the story, that the computer went to the New York Post, and the New York Post had the computer and they had the records, and they wouldn't share it with anybody so that nobody could do their own reporting on it. They were just supposed to retell the Post story. And the Post story was just sort of like really vague. Here we go. This is really important here.
About Hunter Biden laptop disinformation, the guy who leaked it. Here's the deal. Before I even get into my questions, I think that the story here with the Washington Post reporting is that what they're saying right here, when the New York Post first reported in October 2020 that it had obtained contents of a laptop computer allegedly owned by Joe Biden's son Hunter, there was an immediate roadblock faced by other news outlets that hoped to corroborate reporting, as many did. The newspaper wasn't sharing what it obtained. New York Post had this alleged information and was trying to publish it without any corroboration, without any backup information. They were trying to publish it to Twitter. Twitter did not let them, and now they were upset. I believe that political operatives who sought to inject explosive disinformation with the Washington Post couldn't get away with it. And now they're livid. And they want the ability to do it again. They want the ability to inject this again. So they've dragged a social media platform here in Congress. They're weaponizing the use of this committee so that they can do it again. A whole hearing about a 24-hour hiccup in a right-wing political operation. That is why we are here right now. And it's just an abuse of public resources, an abuse of public time. We could be talking about healthcare. We could be talking about bringing down the cost of prescription drugs. We could be talking about abortion rights, civil rights, voting rights. But instead, we're talking about Hunter Biden's half-fake laptop story. I mean, this is an embarrassment, but I'll go into it. Ms. Navarrete, let's talk about something real. I'd like to show you a tweet posted by former President Trump about my colleagues and I on July 14th, 2019. It says in part, quote, "Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? Then come back and show us how it's done. These places need your help badly. You can't leave fast enough. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would be very happy as quickly to work out free travel arrangements. A day or two after that, Donald Trump publicly incited, violence at a rally, targeting 4 congresswomen, including myself, saying, "Go back to where you came from." Ms. Navaroli, as I understand it, you were the most senior member of Twitter's content moderation team, or a senior member of Twitter's content moderation team when this was posted. As part of your responsibilities, did you review this tweet?
Yes, it was my team's responsibility to review these tweets.
And what did you conclude?
My team made the recommendation that for the first time, we find Donald Trump in violation of Twitter's policies and use the public interest interstitial.
For the first time?
Yes.
And at the time, Twitter's policy included a specific example when it came to banned abuse against immigrants, as they specifically included the phrase, "Go back to your country," or go back to where you came from, correct?
Yes, that was specifically included in the content moderation guidance as an example.
You brought this up to the Vice President of Trust and Safety, Del Harvey, correct?
I did, yes.
And she overrode your assessment, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
And something interesting happened after she overrode your assessment. A day or two later, Twitter seemed to have changed their policies, didn't they?
Yes, that trope, "go back to where you came from," was removed from the content moderation guidance as an example.
So Twitter changed their own policy after the president violated it in order to potentially accommodate his tweet?
Yes.
Thank you. So much for bias against right wing on Twitter. Additionally, Ms. Navaroli, are you familiar with the account Libs of TikTok?
I have heard of it from the news, yes.
Mr. Roth, are you familiar with this account?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Are you aware that from August 11th to August 16th, that account posted false information about Boston Children's Hospital, claiming that they were providing hysterectomies to children?
Yes, I am aware of that and other claims from the account.
And are you aware that this lie was then circulated by other prominent far-right influencers?
Yes.
And are you aware that all these claims, which I have reiterated were false, culminated in a real-life harassment and ultimately a bomb threat to the Boston Children's Hospital?
Yes, I am aware.
And this account is still on that platform today, isn't it?
Regrettably, yes, it is.
Despite inspiring a bomb threat due to the right-wing incitement of violence against trans Americans in this country, because they cannot let go of this obsession with fixating violence and inciting violence against trans and LGBT people, in addition to immigrants, in addition to women of color.
All right. Well, you get the point. And we should also note that Libs of TikTok was, had there was a special threshold that they had. Yeah. So in this one segment, she, destroys the narrative that the Hunter Biden story was being suppressed for no reason whatsoever. And we should mention at the end, I still don't know what is... no one who has ever complained about the suppression of the Hunter Biden story has ever said what the story is outside of the dick pics that Matt Taibbi was able to release as part of the Twitter files. Or at least he didn't actually release, they were just the URLs. So we didn't actually have to, he in some way also suppressed the dick pics because he didn't show those. He just had URLs to them. She demolishes that and then goes on to show that, in fact, they changed the rules for Donald Trump after the fact. They had a higher threshold for Libs of TikTok. And now there's Rolling Stone reporting that comes out and says that, all of these supposed dark arts of will you take down this post and take down that post was happening with both parties, except for the ones that were happening from the Republicans were coming from elected Republican officials in the government controlled by Donald Trump at that time.
It's an amazing story. And can I just say, just as an aside, how great AOC is. She is just really an exceptional representative. And it just, I'm always just in awe of when I watch her in action. She's great, whether she's talking to the press or in a situation like that.
It's amazing really how I mean, there's one or two others, there's maybe like another handful, I would say half a dozen Congress people who can do a hearing. Katie Porter, and I think, maybe, and some people with some,
I think Ilhan's was great on the foreign services.
But like, why is it only like 6 people out of 220 that can do this? Is it just like the intelligence of the congressperson, or is it like they know how to pick a staff, or like, what is it?
Well, I think with AOC and the ones you mentioned, I think this is just a natural talent. This is just somebody with the brains and the the erudition to be able to take those situations and run with them. And they obviously have good staffs too. I mean, I don't know. All I know is that she's terrific, and that whole presentation of hers, it was super important for all the reasons that you set forth in the beginning. Which, number one, the Hunter Biden story. The one thing that she said that is just so important for people to realize was when she said it was a 24-hour hiccup. This story that was suppressed and which changed the course of the election, according to the right wing. Seriously, they believe that if only this had been allowed to be disseminated properly, no one would have voted for Joe Biden, which is completely absurd. But whatever. This is their latest belief that if it was only 24 hours that Twitter suppressed the story. That just 24 hours. It was nothing. It was a blip in the middle of the campaign. I didn't even notice it at the time until long after, when it became a big deal. So, I mean, first of all, that's a huge part of the thing. And then the rest of it that she outlined there, this idea that Trump got the special treatment, and we found out that he did. I mean, there was the story that came out in that same hearing about Chrissy Teigen, the actress, celebrity, whatever model, who sent out a profane tweet about Donald Trump. I mean, haven't we all done it? And I mean, sometimes you just can't help it. And somehow the White House basically called up Twitter and asked them to remove it because I guess it hurt his feelings or something, and they did it. I mean, this is what was actually going on. It's like you said, Sam, it's revealed that they had a special, they had a point at which this woman who was testifying there was no longer allowed to handle the Donald Trump account. It was beyond her scope, and she was running this whole operation in there of the terms of service and all that. They actually took that out of her hands, and Donald Trump was given special dispensation every step of the way. Now, I'm not sure that you shouldn't have, he was the president, and, you don't want to suppress political views. I mean, that would be wrong. So there is it's not, just simple, but I mean, we know what this guy was doing. He was literally, as AOC said, inciting violence, and he did it all the time. It wasn't just on January 6th.
Right.
That's why that whole thing about how he wasn't inciting violence. I mean, when wasn't he inciting violence? I mean, the guy was doing it constantly from the time he went down the golden escalator and announced his candidacy. So this was an ongoing problem. And that hearing, it was so interesting because at the end of the hearing, there was one thing that came out about it that we had not known before. And that is that Donald Trump was the one who got all the special treatment and who was demanding that things be taken down, and he and all of his accomplices in the Republican Party were pushing hard to do that. And it was the exact opposite. And as happens so often, the Republicans were projecting onto the Democrats all the things that they were doing, and it came out in that hearing. Now, if you watch that Jesse Waters thing, on the 5 on Fox News, you don't know that, and they're not covering this. So any expectation that the right wing is going to be clued in about this is wrong, because they won't know about it. But
I agree. I agree totally. But I also think the thing that is nice about that Waters clip that we played is that there's an acknowledgement we live in two different worlds. And fortunately for us at this time, the world that we live in has like 1 to 2 to 3 or 4 or 5% more voters. And, I mean, that's just the reality. And, and this dovetails with the State of the Union address and the sort of the response that we saw from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, which is like, they're done. They are happy that they live in a separate world because they now have their own ecosystem.
Yeah.
And everybody's making a buck, and they almost can't tell that their stuff is not being broadcast in the sort of the rest of the universe. And so the compulsion to get it in there, the thing that Drudge used to do, laundering this stuff into it, that is gone. No one seems to be, there's no money, as it were. There's no fame, there's no celebrity, there's no incentive structure anymore on the right to be that conduit that Drudge was. And so it's rattling around in there, and you get Sarah Huckabee Sanders come up and give her response to the State of the Union, dropping stuff like Joe Biden, even though he's really old and completely ineffectual, is actually the point of the spear of this woke, radical left mob that is doing something. Really, it's nebulous. We can't quite tell what it is exactly because we can't describe it in any way. And it's basically involves CRT, these three magic letters that most people are like, wait, what? Yeah. CR what? And wait, woke mob, like what? And they're satisfied with it. And again, could work. They've figured out how to maintain minoritarian rule, but that's the world that they're in now. And it is, I just find it just utterly fascinating. Like even like the Twitter file stuff, like they're convinced this is the biggest, and every single person, some of whom, I used to consider a pretty decent reporter, every single person involved in that fiasco should be completely embarrassed. And what it has also done, even though they were talking about like, can you believe the Twitter files are not being covered on mainstream news? They have now validated every single one of those editors, producers, whatever decision not to carry this, because it turned out to be completely what everybody said it was, a story of a social media company trying to deal with this new reality. I think certainly there's criticism that is available to them, but they were doing it equally. They were completely equally befuddled by whomever. There was no like political agenda associated with it. And they leaked half the story, essentially. Right. And everybody knew like, this seems incomplete. And all those reporters should have known it too.
We don't know that they didn't know it. I mean, I hate to cast aspersions here, but when after the hearing, Matt, and everybody was talking about the Chrissy Teigen thing, and what she said and how that had been removed at the behest of the Trump people, and Taibbi, and there was a lot of criticism of him. He was the guy who wrote that particular part of the Twitter files, and
remember, he was the first guy, he was the guy who was brought out to provide it credibility.
Exactly. He was supposed to be, hey, look, here's one of your lefties here.
It was his credibility. It was his credibility on the line.
Well, he said his explanation for all of this was, I did write that it happened with the Trump administration too, which he did. There was one small line in there that said that. And he said, yeah, but sure, LOL, Chrissy Teigen. That was his response as a reporter.
I missed that.
And in those whole Twitter files, like the 4 million long thread that was posted, just to the aside mention of Trump, he's had follow-up reports where you could dig into. It's not
just Twitter files 208 now.
Yeah, right. Like this was not just the Biden campaign saying, "Can you please take the dick pics of my son who has struggled down." This was the Trump White House at the time. And so if you're actually trying to look into like government colluding with big tech, that might be on your radar, right? Because they were the actual government at that point, not just a political campaign. Biden wasn't in office at that time. Right. So
here's the tweet that you were referencing. And what's amazing about this tweet is that he says, I reported in Twitter files, one, that there had been requests from the Trump White House. That sentence is the totality of his reporting of that he had written there had been requests from the Trump White House in the first report. That's the totality.
Subtext there is, I covered my ass.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Bare minimum.
And then he spends, he says, we showed agencies like the FBI send spreadsheets with thousands of names at a time. Well, that's true. I mean, they were politically motivated across both sides. Adam Schiff's office asked that all searches of his office be blocked, but Adam Schiff was not the only person making these requests.
Yeah.
McCarthy. I mean, like everybody, like they all were doing it. And it's like well,
any of us could have done that. I mean, I could go in and go,
businesses
could
do
you
that
please? Yeah,
every day.
Of course.
Every day they do that. They did it. They do it. And politicians have been doing it with news media. And he knows this.
Yes.
He knows this. If you go on TV, and it doesn't matter what network you are, I mean, Ed Schultz and used to talk about this. Cenk Uygur talked about it on MSNBC. They would say something critical of the administration. Phil Griffin would call him in or whatever it was and say, you can't do this. You can't do that. We're getting pressure from this guy. We're getting pressure. Happened on CNN, happened on all the networks. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, so it's reported sort of like breathlessly as if it's but it really is sort of stunning the hole they're in.